So one of the major course objectives is that you know why and how to do a functional behavioral assessment, or what we call an FBA. It's very important that each and every teacher understands how to effectively complete an FBA. So this course teaches to the creation of an FBA and leading to a behavioral intervention plan. Of course, the BIP, Behavioral Intervention Plan, is based on the data you collect in your FBA. So before we get into all this data collection, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the FBA. So typically a team of individuals completes the FBA. So in doing this assignment, if you're doing it by yourself, please recognize that in a school system, there would be individuals who'd be working with you to collect the interview information. They'd be reviewing the records, cumulative records. They would bring it to the team. They would help do observations and interviews with parents, and they would interview teachers, and there'd probably be people in and out of the room at different times watching different kinds of behaviors. And there'd probably be a great deal more data collected as a result of having a team doing it rather than just you doing it. So the FBA and the BIP go hand in hand. After all, you cannot truly change a severe behavior if you do not understand the cause, or what we refer to as the function of it, right? So I also want to point out that it's important that you recognize that you are working on the idea that an FBA isn't typically done for the kind of tier 1 universal misbehaviors we see for most kids, or even for tier 2 where kids have not responded well to tier 1 interventions that teachers typically would do for the universal group of kids. But now they're into tier 2, which is a little more intense, but it could be in small groups, or it might be a little bit individual, but it's not as intense. If a student gets to tier 3, you might be looking at using an FBA to figure out what the function of that behavior is, because things that you've done before they haven't responded to. Sometimes it feels necessary to begin an intervention before you've actually figured out what the function is. And that's when what we believe is creating that behavior, the hypothesis. We collect data for intensive short time frames to see if our ideas or our hypothesis about the function is correct. We'll find effect if we have identified the right intervention and start using it, and we turn out to have an equivalent replacement skill that we've taught through that intervention time. For instance, we hypothesize that our student is doing a misbehavior to get attention, but we're not quite sure yet if that's the true function. So most people go after saying that they'll use planned ignoring as their first intervention if they think the student is trying to get attention as a function of their need. However, I'm going to tell you that I think if you're doing ignoring or planned ignoring, it's almost an impossible intervention to use with fidelity in a school, because there's so many other factors around it that lead to things not ignoring it. Other kids in the room, other adults, you yourself will find it hard to ignore a behavior for a very long period. And so it kind of gets in the way of the fidelity of that intervention, and it borders on punishment if it's not teaching any skills and is prolonged. So instead, let's think this way. Why not check out the function by pouring on the attention if we think that's the function? For instance, teacher, I need attention. The kid is screaming through his behaviors. And teach through reinforcing the replacement behaviors we see and desire to see, you want to see them. Even the tiniest steps toward those behaviors we want to see are progress made. So we're paying attention to the student. And then collect the data to see if the misbehavior starts to disappear. This kind of pouring on the attention, if we suspect attention, may satisfy more than the student's need, but also the teacher's need. Because we know if we are teachers want to teach. What happens if the students get their needs met and the teacher gets the relief he or she desires? Teaching occurs. Great. Historically, students with disabilities, specifically students with EBD, have been labeled as bad, delinquent, rotten, spoiled, or students who have had bad parenting. So, after the elimination of adversive behavioral treatment to students with disabilities, positive behavior support began to find its way into schools and into the law through RTI and into residential treatment homes and other facilities. And people began to realize there may be a reason behind the students' behaviors. That's great. Aha! They may not just be spoiled. They may be seeking attention in the only way they have learned how to get it. Or perhaps they don't understand the material they're learning in school and feel stupid. Next to their peers, often they can feel stupid. Therefore, they simply don't appear to be listening to their teacher and want to escape feeling stupid. One of the most important considerations should be that the student may not have actually acquired or learned the necessary behavioral skills yet. That's what we call replacement skills, behaviors to the rescue now, okay? Interestingly, we don't expect students to learn math or literacy on their own, yet there is often kind of an expectation or attitude that they should have learned behavior, social skills, for instance, when they come to school. These skills don't travel through the ozone, guys, for learning, and they do not happen after students are told to perform them. They require teaching of the necessary steps and reinforcement for performing them. I know you guys know this. I'm talking to the peanut gallery, I'm sure. The scenario is all too common and shouldn't be the case of how a student is treated, because that's the same way for learning social skills as we treat them when we're teaching academic skills. So consider how many steps are involved in introducing yourself to a stranger. Don't forget the part about learning the steps for how to perform the dreaded small talk afterwards. Get through the introduction, and then it's like, that's the part I hate too. So, social skills, or social behaviors like compliance, must be taught and reinforced just like we teach long division. Along that line, it's important that we watch a student doing long division and let them practice. But would we let them practice doing it wrong, doing a step wrong, without stopping and reviewing the step and reinforcing them as they perform the step correctly? I don't think so. Good teachers would stop them. We even reward them once they got the math right with smiles and stickers and tangibles. So why wouldn't we do that the same way with social behaviors? Something to think about. The FBA is an assessment tool that's used to understand the function behind a student's behavior. Why is that student acting that way? What does the behavior do for the student? What's the payoff? Don't forget to examine the academic reasons for misbehavior. Is the misbehavior covering a need for teaching gaps in learning? Then, with the use of multiple sources of data, using varied observational techniques as well, you can begin to hypothesize the function of the behavior and then to begin to look for alternative ways to provide support to your student. Look forward to the next part on practicing data collection and examining the results.